Right. We have a great attendance today. Thank you very much for attending. We're going to discuss the PeopleSoft and Blackline case study and roadmap. My name is Stephanie Hilton. I'm an employee at SpearMC. PeopleSoft ERP started today are very loyal to PeopleSoft software. It has great functionality, but they are at the same time increasingly turning to bolt-on software to automate and extend the capacity of their business applications. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the finance automation capabilities of Blackline with PeopleSoft integration. Some of the modules that I'll mention to one extent or another in Blackline include account reconciliations, variance analysis, transaction matching, intercompany financials, and accounts receivable automation. The combination of PeopleSoft with Blackline met the needs of the customer, as I'm going to show in the case studies. So I encourage each of you to evaluate, the needs of your own organization with PeopleSoft, Oracle, Blackline, etc. I will show you a case study of Blackline integration with PeopleSoft for intercompany financials. The resulting business transformation was awesome. We met compliance requirements, and we had no additional manual transaction processing. And then finally in the agenda, I will reveal a roadmap for a SpearMC PeopleSoft configurable connector to Blackline so that future implementations can be accomplished without added customization, effort, or expense. You can decustomize existing integrations if you have them. In my experience, having a pre-built connector makes the business case and the implementation of bolt-on software with PeopleSoft go much more smoothly. This presentation is available in the handouts that you'll see in your control panel. We are launching a poll right now to learn a little more about the audience. There will be two questions. The first one is regarding what PeopleSoft image update image you're currently on. If you could please answer that for your PeopleSoft financials environment, that would be great. And we're just going to give it just a few more seconds. We have a few more people still voting. Thanks. Susan, it looks like we're pretty good. Could you share the poll results with us?
Here we go. Yes, we have 12% at PUM 45 or greater, 35% PUM 40 to 44, 14% PUM 35 to 39, 3% PUM 30 to 34, and then 36% prior to PUM 30, or they're not sure.
Okay, so we've got almost 50% of the population at PUM 40 or greater, and then 36% prior to PUM 30 are not sure. So sounds good. Okay, one more poll. I know that we've talked about PeopleSoft. I'm going to ask you about your familiarity or experience with Blackline. So that poll is launching now. Okay, looks good. Susan, can you share those results?
Yes, we've got 20% currently using, or I'm sorry, 27% currently using, 20% currently evaluating, and 54% not currently using.
Okay, great. That's good. We got about 1/4 of current customers and 3/4 not customers today. Very good. So moving on, a little about myself. I joined SpearMC just last year. Previously, I worked 12 years at Oceaneering. The last decade or so, I was the senior manager of the global financial applications. Oceaneering has a large PeopleSoft footprint. They also have a very large global footprint. We operate on all the continents except Antarctica. So in my time there, I was accountable for a large number of projects, including the implementation with Blackline for intercompany financials and other third-party software. So while I was at Oceaneering, I found SpearMC. I found them to be super easy to work with. They were able to find me niche PeopleSoft knowledge when I needed it. And last year, I decided to make the career change for myself. So there you'll see my email address. I should be super easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Just contact me with any questions. So SpearMC is a PeopleSoft specialty firm. They're actually Gartner recognized vendor in their PeopleSoft offerings. Just to highlight some of the popular offerings, we have testing offerings for people wanting to stay current, both testing as a service and the PeopleSoft test framework. Another super popular offering here is training. SpearMC offers PeopleSoft training. There's a lot of information on the website about that. In addition, SpearMC is a reseller of Oracle guided learning. This is really for the PeopleSoft casual users. It's a real-time training alternative. As opposed to training documentation, you have ways to walk you through a transaction in PeopleSoft. So essentially, feel free to reach out to myself or SpearMC with any PeopleSoft questions, whether it's around testing, hosting, technical or functional support. I have experience with a wide variety of industries and organizations. As mentioned, they are Gartner recognized just last year for professional services and Oracle Cloud Platform experience in 2022. And SOC certified for protecting customer information. So today's presentation is a focus on Blackline, what Blackline has to offer to existing PeopleSoft customers. There are a few modules in Blackline that I will mention to one extent or another. Many of these features will overlap with some of the PeopleSoft and Oracle functionality. I'll try to casually mention that where I can. But I just encourage you to evaluate whether Blackline has additional automation functionality available that would reduce either manual nature of transaction processing or initial financial analysis. So one of the modules in Blackline is account reconciliations. In my experience, account reconciliations are a control on balance sheet accounts. I actually implemented the PeopleSoft account reconciliations in my last role. Blackline does offer additional auto certification options. One example would be if you have no activity within an accounting period, maybe those chart fields have a balance on them, but no journal lines in that accounting period, it can auto certify that for you. Variance analysis is typically a control that I've seen on income statement accounts. I've seen it addressed previously with different reporting tools. Blackline offers a variety of variance rules and groups that will analyze the balance and activity fluctuations to try to automate initial analysis. Again, reducing the manual effort involved. Transaction matching. This is for comparing detail-heavy transactions and creating automation, configurable automation rules that can match one-to-many or many-to-many transactions, such as maybe your bank account activity or your subsystem transactions. It can help you to compare and match those transactions in a reconciliation. Intercompany financial management. So this is the case study I will be including additional detail on. Blackline has pre-built billing options, which can help automate the journal entries resulting from that intercompany financials, and also produce and retain tax compliant invoices. I have worked with this in PeopleSoft a little previously before we implemented it in Blackline. And then accounts receivable automation. This is your whole order to cash cycle, whether that's a customer order to cash cycle or intercompany, it really can work with either one. So there's a few other modules available in Blackline. I'm just going to focus on these today as they, I feel they're most relevant for integration with PeopleSoft. So the PeopleSoft and Blackline case study, this project was completed in my prior role as Oceaneering Senior Manager of Global Financial Applications. Oceaneering has a very large footprint in PeopleSoft, a lot of modules, as well as a lot of integrations, and a large footprint in the world, geographically, in the continents. So here's the PeopleSoft environment information at the time of the Blackline go live. We integrated with 2 PeopleSoft environments, and that will be the global PeopleSoft financials environment, as you see at the top. And then we also, at the third one down, we had a localized version of PeopleSoft for Brazil. So the challenge or the complexity of the problem the team was tasked to resolve. We had an entity structure that consisted of roughly 1,100 intercompany due to and due from pairs, and no one wanted to manually maintain those pairs. So we needed an automated way to build all the pairs. The as-is process, we were really lacking in sufficient intercompany invoices and appropriate documentation. Sometimes intercompany documentation was manually created. It typically lacked the compliance requirements. It often lacked the appropriate taxes or markup. Most of the time, the recording in the general ledger did not meet corporate's expectations. We really needed this automated to process through with rules and default decisions made in advance during the project implementation. We needed the system to force our correct transactions rather than relying on training for the corrections. The business case for this project was very strong. We had material financial exposure to penalties for non-compliance. There are a number of countries, it seems, increasing around the world where this is a requirement. At the time, we were trying to meet UK's Making Tax Digital requirements. I was also pretty close to Brazil and Angola for their requirements. And then the business case required that we were able to create intercompany invoices and the resulting journal entries with little to no touch processing. A key assumption was that we were not adding headcount, and we needed to process these transactions with the bandwidth of the staff that we already had. So our proposed solution for this implementation and integration with PeopleSoft included a repository for intercompany agreements. It included a repository for intercompany invoices and defaults that would enforce treatment consistency. So to do this, we had to enable the intercompany pairs. As I previously mentioned, we did not have that done in PeopleSoft. We chose to do that in Blackline as a matter of ease. We needed to build a legal entity relationship hierarchy. So we had a lot of business units that were many to one with a legal entity, and we were currently building that structure outside of our applications. So our solution was that we wanted both applications and other applications to have access to this structure. So we built that in PeopleSoft, and then we integrated it to Blackline. We had to automate the invoices. We could have no manual billing transactions. We had no billing staff with access to Blackline. All the billing was to be automated or through the additional intercompany entries done by accounting. We wanted to make our workflow as simple as possible. There's options for additional levels of approval within Blackline. We chose basically an edit and post separation of duties so that we could reduce the administration of posting these entries. There's other options if you want the sending and receiving business unit to each approve. That would also be an option. It was just one that we chose not to exercise. And we had a lot of defaults tied to transaction types. So the transaction types became pretty critical to enforce accounting and tax treatment. Examples of transaction type are like labor, so services. We also had a transaction type for inventory, also one for cash, like due to and due from cash. So what this did is enforce consistent treatment. We had rules and predefined values for the chart fields. So we'd already predefined what account and other chart fields would be selected based on transaction type. We also set up indirect taxes. So VAT tax was pretty important for us around the world. And we defined the markup. So the receiving party was generally paying at cost plus a percentage of markup. So ultimately our solution was a pretty complex integration, but it ended up being a bi-directional integration. So we functioned in two directions. When an intercompany invoice or journal was posted in Blackline, then Blackline would send the valid journal entry to the PeopleSoft general ledger. And when PeopleSoft received and posted the Blackline journal, then it would send an acknowledgement back to Blackline with key information to tie that transaction together in both applications. So we had data references in each application for that transaction. So kind of in summary, Blackline became a subsystem to the PeopleSoft, and PeopleSoft was retained as a system of record. So the decisions that we made early on in our project, we were unanimous in agreeing the PeopleSoft subsystem intercompany accounting entries already worked well for us. We were all satisfied with the way it was working. We were using the direct method of intercompany accounting with affiliate chart fields. And we did not want to re-implement our PeopleSoft subsystems. So we wanted to build our pairs in Blackline because it was a more automated fashion than in PeopleSoft. And then with the subsystem transactions, which is what Blackline terminology will call product transactions, we integrated these by sending the entries from PeopleSoft to Blackline for further processing. So in summary, our product or subsystem transactions did not change in PeopleSoft. We sent them to Blackline, and there we were able to create invoices, store the invoices, and create adjusting journal entries that could be sent back to PeopleSoft. So another decision made pretty early in our project is that unlike the subsystem intercompany, the manual general ledger intercompany journal entries were not working as well for us. We had too much flexibility for our users. So while regular single business unit journal entries, we wanted to keep those in PeopleSoft because that was working well. What we chose to do is disable manual intercompany journal entries in PeopleSoft. We no longer allowed our users to enter an intercompany journal entry in PeopleSoft. We had them enter them in Blackline instead. Blackline calls these manual journal entries non-product transactions. And by requiring our users to enter their manual intercompany journal entries in Blackline, we could force consistent predefined treatment with the chart field values, the taxes, the markup. We could create the invoices and store the invoices, and we could create the adjusting journal entries and send them back to PeopleSoft. For implementation, I mean, this was a really significant project for us. We assembled a multifunctional team consisting of the oceaneering accounting team, the tax team, and the PeopleSoft IT team. In addition, we had project team members from Blackline. We also had a Blackline implementation partner. Our core team met daily, consisted of roughly 10 people. And we had an extended team, which included roughly 30 people. Project duration was about 9 months, a little longer than we originally anticipated, but that was okay. And as part of our testing process for the final 2 months, we did run parallel processing for 2 accounting periods, validating both the non-product or the subsystem data between both systems, but also a real-time training for accounting to enter their manual or non-product journal entries in Blackline and validate that we could reconcile between our PeopleSoft production and our sandbox environments. So the results were pretty impressive, even to the members of the core team, to see the volume of intercompany transactions that we were able to capture, and capture them hands-free, no additional manual effort. We were able to automate about 300 journal entries per month, and even with summarizing like chart field combinations, that was 10 to 15,000 journal lines every month. So it was pretty impressive. It was a huge volume, and we would have not had the hands to do that manually. The IT project was a pretty large one. We had quite a few integrations. We had 22 master data integrations from PeopleSoft to Blackline. So this is everything from chart field values to combo edits. We needed exchange rates, we needed VAT rates, business units, quite a few master data integrations. In addition to that, we also had 6 transactional data integrations. from PeopleSoft to Blackline. So think about the subsystem data I mentioned before, accounts payable, accounts receivable, etc. We had the one journal entry integration. So as Blackline became a subsystem, we sent journals from Blackline to PeopleSoft. And then we had a real-time journal acknowledgement from PeopleSoft to back to Blackline. When a journal was posted, it would send a message to Blackline. It would include the journal entry, some other key fields, data to tie that transaction back to the source. So total of 30 integrations went live. So next on the agenda, Blackline and SpearMC have been working together on potentially building a PeopleSoft connector to Blackline. So we're gathered today to gauge your interest in this roadmap. If this is something the audience is interested in, the connector would be designed so that future implementations can be accomplished without additional customization effort, expense, and it just makes the business case and the implementation go more smoothly. As you're probably used to seeing, there's a disclaimer for software. The roadmap is a description of future features subject to change. Our roadmap consists of 5 phases. And they build upon each other. So there is a rhyme and reason to the order in which they're presented. So in the first phase, we're looking at the Blackline account reconciliations and matching modules. And in order to enable those, we want to send from PeopleSoft to Blackline the ledger balances, the journal lines, and if they apply to your organization, then exchange rates. And then the second phase continues with matching, but it adds also variance analysis generally for income statement accounts. And this is to send from PeopleSoft to Blackline the subsystem detail. Then in phase 3, we would like to enable the journal entry, allowing Blackline to act as a subsystem to PeopleSoft. But in order to do that, we would send from PeopleSoft to Blackline the chart field structure, any common setup, any master data that you want to send, as well as combination edits. Because you want those journal entries to flow to PeopleSoft without errors. We want journals that will pass journal edit. So all that leads up to where oceaneering ended, or where oceaneering started, which was intercompany financials. And so in addition to the prior phases, we would also need an entity structure and tax rates if they apply. And then phase 5, either for commercial or for intercompany, is to enable accounts receivable automation. So if you want to, automate like similar to payment predictor, automate your customer matching on cash received, or you want to be able to net accounts receivable and accounts payable, then this last phase would be looking at those options. I've had multiple meetings with Blackline, and we've reviewed this, and these are the phases that we feel like best lead up to, starting with an initial implementation leading up to the full complexity. And that's the presentation for today. So we are accepting questions. In your control panel, there is a questions option. If you want to enter any questions, please enter them there. We will be distributing the recording after today's session, and I want to thank you all for your great attendance today.
Hey, Stephanie, we have 2 questions already.
Great.
And the first is, Could the transaction matching cover matching between merchandise receipts and invoices, or is this left to use the PeopleSoft matching program? Did that one make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Thanks. I think you could do it either way. The PeopleSoft matching program, I've seen it work well for people, but maybe there's something unique about your organization where Blackline could add additional functionality for you. I think I'm going to say with that one, it probably depends upon your use case. Either one could be an option.
Okay, and the next question would be, do you build a web surface connector between Blackline and PeopleSoft to allow for real-time validations?
Yes, so from a technical perspective, we want to have options for the customer. So we want to enable an option of either a file transfer or a real-time integration. So different customers have different preferences. We want to give you the option of doing either.
Great. And then we have a follow-up question in regards to that. Follow-up, let's see, sounds like yes. Was this a lengthy process?
It was for intercompany financials for Oceaneering. It's a very complex company, and we started with a very complex module. So, and we had a lot to learn. So it was a 9-month project for us. I think that with the right connector and the right support, it could be a faster process.
Okay. How long does the 5-step integration usually take?
Oh, the 5 phases of building the connector. That's a great question. I think I'm going to answer that in months. I'd say we could build it in months. And we would have to come up with a real project plan to get into a little more detail.
Okay, we've got, are we validating journal in Blackline or in PeopleSoft?
Actually, both. So when the entry originates in Blackline, it is validated there using all the combo edit rules that we've integrated from PeopleSoft to Blackline. So we really want Blackline to validate it. Think about like PeopleSoft accounts payable. You want that validation at the source. However, when it integrates, when the journal is posted in Blackline and integrates to PeopleSoft, PeopleSoft is going to rerun their own edits. And that's fine, because if the edits ran properly in Blackline, it should pass edits in both applications. So the editing process is done in both, initially in Blackline and then again in PeopleSoft.
Great. When using API for the journal module, did you see any concerns with the time it takes to edit or post in PeopleSoft and then send the message back to Blackline? For example, timeouts.
Not when the applications were up and running as expected. When there was downtime for whatever reason, then sure, there'd be some latency. But in general, if the applications were up and running as expected, then no, we didn't have any problems. The acknowledgements passed through real quickly. Was not an issue.
Okay, we've got how well the real-time post is working between Blackline and PeopleSoft. During close, we are having performance issues due to volume of journals.
I haven't seen that issue, but I'm sure there's a lot of factors involved in how that's running. So that's not an issue that I'm familiar with. I can follow up with the technical team at Oceaneering and see if there's something that I haven't been aware of before, but I'm not aware of that issue.
How much help would we need from our internal IT department for the connector project?
Well, that's the assumption of the connector project. Assumption of the connector project is that SpearMC together with Blackline helps build it, and then your internal IT department has not very much involvement. If IT does your configuration, then you will need someone from whoever does your configuration. You'll need some configuration in PeopleSoft for the connector. But the connector, the technical aspects of the connector would be built by SpearMC and Blackline, and then handed off with very little involvement from your IT department.
Okay, we got quite a few questions coming in now. Would it be possible to use Blackline to do our bank recs? And does Blackline have the ability to match GL data to external transactional data downloaded from our banks?
Yes and yes. Yep, they do bank recs. They'll match bank recs, and they will also, you can import data from external sources and match it in Blackline too.
Once we post journal in PeopleSoft, then are we sending status using REST API?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
Are the subsystems like AP sending their transactions to PeopleSoft, GL, or to Blackline?
So a little bit of both. So for example, in my case study, PeopleSoft AP was working just like it always had. It was still sending all of its data to the PeopleSoft GL. Now, in addition to that, if the AP transaction had an intercompany component, then that intercompany component also was sent to Blackline for additional processing. So, so AP to GL, just the same way it always had. Whether it was single business unit or intercompany, it still went to the GL. But if there was an intercompany component, then that source transaction along with the receiving transaction also went to Blackline to create an invoice, to apply taxes, to create markup, and anything that was calculated, that adjusting journal entry got sent again to the PeopleSoft GL. So there's no duplication in PeopleSoft GL.
Okay.
For subsystem transactions, only the adjustments that were calculated in Blackline, GL.
Great. Next question. What is integration method?
So we went to make available to customers both the file transfers, SFTP, and then API, so that either option is available. And we use a combination of both at Oceaneering. Some of the integrations were SFTP, and some of them were API. It just depended upon the data, how frequently we needed to send it. Was it okay to do it in batch? Was it something that we wanted real time? There was a decision made case by case. Our intention for the connector is to make both available.
Okay. Does real time mean web service?
I think so. I mean, maybe that's getting, maybe I'm not sure if I understand the question. Web service API, that's what I mean by real-time integration.
Okay. Are there
So
any?
I hope that's clear. I'm not as technical as some others, so there may be another way to state that.
Are there other case study sessions talking about account recon, variance analysis, etc.?
I haven't personally worked on all the other modules, so I personally don't have those case studies available today. If in the future, you know, I am able to work on a project where those modules are implemented, you know, I've evaluated them but not implemented them, maybe we can do case studies on more modules in the future.
Okay, and for the next question, I think it's asking what large volume of entries per journal does it allow?
So the best way that I can answer that is to our average volume once we were in production. We were running approximately 300 journals a month, and that was 10 to 15,000 journal lines. So I don't know if I do the math real quick, how many journal lines that is per journal, but it's a lot.
Okay. Any timeout issue when loading large number of entries posting in PeopleSoft?
Not to my knowledge. I can follow up with some technical people at Oceaneering and see if they've seen that. But is in my what I saw in my experience was, you know, as long as both the applications were up and there were no issues, that it was running smoothly. But I can follow up on that one and see if there's any other information.
Okay, great. As someone just posted, we have a consistent issue with a journal over 1,000 lines that keep timing out.
Okay. That could be. I'm not aware of it, but it's possible.
Okay. How much ongoing maintenance is required with the journal creation? For example, automated journal definitions.
You know, unless something's changing, I don't expect a lot of ongoing maintenance. I'm not that I can think of.
Okay, and just a few more questions here. And if we skip any or miss any questions, we'll definitely follow up via email too. There's quite a few here. Is there any issue of using the connector if we have lots of FMS customizations?
You know, I guess it's going to touch on where your customizations are. If you're using, you know, the delivered accounting periods, you're using delivered exchange rates, you know, it's sort of the base functionality of PeopleSoft. So it may depend on where your customizations are, but we had lots of customizations that didn't really affect the data that we needed to integrate to Blackline.
Great, and here is, looks like the last questions are, are you automatically posting the journal in PeopleSoft upon import, or are you running the post separately?
We ran journal edit and post as part of a batch job. So I think it would be separate. I mean, it did run edit and post. It didn't just post upon import.
Great, and those are about all the questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all the interest. I really appreciate it. You know, please reach out to me if you have questions or further interest in this connector. I'd be glad to work with you, and SpearMC will be glad to work with you too. Thanks, everybody. And I think that ends our session today.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Susan.